want to take them, please don't be shy. It's always good having people right at the front.
Not Alistair.
Yes. No, not you. Yeah.
You can sit in the...
Oh, no, or John Hunt. Oh, anybody too rigorous to hanging judge.
Kia ora. I'm delighted to welcome you all here on behalf of Boffa, Miskell and Urban Design Forum. It's Urban Design Forum's first event of 2019 and we're very excited about this and it's great to see so many faces here. We're fortunate to have a great lineup of debaters. We have Ben, who has very kindly at the 11th hour stepped in for Sanborn, so he will be playing Sanborn tonight.
Not Sanborn. If you're expecting Sanborn, you want to see him, you can leave now.
So we do have to my right, the public sector. They'll be introduced by Nick Williamson. And then to my left, the private sector, arguing against each other. I'll leave Nick to give the teams a more thorough and entertaining introduction. But before we start, I've got a few housekeeping matters. Emergency procedures. In the event of an emergency evacuation, please leave the building immediately through the nearest fire exit. You'll see the person sign there and it is by the lifts. And then you need to gather down by the Muddy Farmer. But an employee, one of us who are around, if people raise their hands, will escort you to the designated area. We ask you, in accordance with the Health and Safety Act, to follow reasonable instructions whilst on the premises and ensure that no hazards are created that will endanger people or property. I'm not quite sure what that entirely what that means.
Is to create a hazard. So.
I'm not entirely sure what that means, so we'll wait and see. There's no smoking anywhere in this building. And the bathrooms, if you haven't already seen them, are located in the foyer by our lifts. So that's the important stuff that you need to know. The other thing is that we're filming this event and broadcasting to other Boffa Miskell offices around the country, and we'll also upload this.
Is anyone there?
There are people,
yes.
Yeah, in Wellington, Christchurch, Queenstown and Tauranga. And we'll upload this to the Urban Design Forum website after the event. So if you don't want to be on camera, you might want to stand behind the cameras.
You're not supposed to be here.
Finally, this is intended to be a fun and entertaining event. The debaters are taking the viewpoint that they have been assigned by Camelia, Ali and I. So please understand that this does not necessarily represent what they actually think about urban design.
Okay. Think at all.
Great, thank you. And I'll hand over to Nick, Chief Civic Hacker from Align,
yes,
who is your moderator this evening.
More heckling.
Right, thanks folks. Right. Now, my job at Align is human-centered design, a practitioner, and my day job is also being a parent. And so it's my parenting skills which are being drawn upon today because dealing with people arguing in small groups is what I do all the time. Now, so what I will do, we'll run through the rules. So this is a debate. I've taken the rules, the original 1957 rules. For competitive debating, and I have adapted them to the design guidelines for this particular debate. So there's not rules, it's flexibility. We'll go through those in a minute. But first I will do the introductions. And so the premise, of course, of the debate is that you have the premise, which is, has urban design been the panacea we'd hoped for? We're having... What could be has? Yes, says the affirmative team, and they're going to be the public sector folks, and no will be the negative team, the private sector people, right? Right, so introductions, and this is, rather than looking up the usual bios that people have on conference websites, I used Siri to get this information, so be careful of your digital footprint, people.
Do I have one?
Yeah, well, yeah, we will find.
Or some Julie
Okay, so. Ben van Bruggen is the manager of city design strategy at Auckland Council. He has been known to take his dog to a cat-only event and tweets great sunset pictures when he's not writing books about police stations. Katja Lietz, the GM of Master Planning and Placemaking at HLC. She's an aficionado and avid follower of the circular economy, innovative housing and Lego. John Duguid, the GM Plans and Places at Auckland Council. He's a failed music student and one-time keyboard player in a gothic rock band. Fortunately, he moved on to deliver us the unitary plan.
Another failed gothic rock band.
Rachel. Rachel DeLambert, the landscape architect and partner at Boffa Miskell, she feels there should be more public art that makes you smile and is fascinated to see how baby boomers will deal with robots.
Hey, just a baby. Yeah.
Julie Stout, an architect and partner at Mitchell Stout Dodd Architects. She grew up in the architectural epicenter that is Palmerston North, sailed to the Mediterranean, backed on a 35-foot boat before finding fame as an activist architect. And Leonie Freeman, the CEO of the Property Council New Zealand, she's an entrepreneur who wears a Fitbit on one wrist and a watch on the other, and has launched realestate.co.nz 3 years before TradeMe even existed.
Missed that one.
Right, so we're going to try and keep it very, very civilised. So as I say, we're back to the rules guidelines for this debate. Now, these are the official ones. So those who have never been to a debate before, this is for you, right? There's only 10. There's 2 teams, each with 3 speakers. No subcontracting or delegating is allowed, or except for Sam Bourne, who's already transferred his function to Ben. But no one else from now on is allowed to swap with anyone else, right? The affirmative public sector goes first, and the negative private sector follows. Negative private sector. So it's kind of like the hearing process. Kind of like the hearing process, but we'll be alternating between experts, so we don't bore you all. Arguments are put forward and rebuttals within each of the speaking slots. So it's going to be less boring than a hearing and more civilised than expert caucusing. Right? So consider me the mediator responsible. I'm the.
So the private sector's already trying to change the laws.
Yes.
But don't worry, they won't let us.
Right. It's my job to break up the fights. All right. Okay.
That's not a fight. That's rebuttal.
And I have a ballot. All right. Okay. Right. The public sector team has the right to make the definitions for each of the terms in the proposition. Nothing new there. Council set the definitions, right? If the negative challenge the definitions, which they're entitled to do, it's you, the judges. This is you people are the judges. Will be using whichever interpretation you think is the best one. So the public sector must support the premise, just like a plan change where no variations are allowed. Okay? Unlike a plan change, the experts here are advocates and are in no way being impartial whatsoever. Okay, just bear that in mind. Clause number 5, they who assert must prove. So in establishing their case, the team must provide sufficient evidence and logic to convince an intelligent but previously uninformed person that they are more reasonable to support their arguments than to disbelieve it.
So he's just described you all in that way. Are you happy about that?
Oh, yeah. Intelligent yet uninformed.
Uninformed, yeah.
Fact checking by the audience is positively encouraged in this regard. So pull out your Google, right? Feel free to call people out on stuff, right? Okay, visual material and props are allowed, but once they're tabled, they are for the record and can be used by both teams. There's no throwing of props or using them as weapons. Right, so cross-examination by you, the audience, is allowed upon the conclusion of the replies and before the judgment, which is also your responsibility. Now, in the question time, so those questions, the teams will be using the answers on your questions as an opportunity to build up or tear down the case. Just like being a witness on the stand during a recess in court, the witnesses aren't allowed to consult with their colleagues and have a team response. I've got to single it out. Right, number 8, just like the further submission process, no new constructive arguments are allowed during the rebuttal period. The public sector must, if possible, reply to the major negative arguments before their right of reply. Number 9. Second to last, the audience is acting as judge, must base their decisions entirely on the material presented here today.
Or any other biases you've previously
without
held.
any knowledge.
Preferable in support of the negative.
We will be using a clapometer to judge at the end. So at the end of the thing, we will be using modern technology, holding it up, saying who gets the biggest applause. Speaking of applause, so what we were doing is making sure they're all going to be allocated a time slot. Each speaker is given a specific amount of time. Nobody's to run over. And to make sure people don't run over time, what we're going to be doing... What is your time slot?
I'm sure you run over.
I might have run over.
Yeah. And the time slot...
And how we... Yes, this is how we're going.
Slow clapping.
Slow clap. Okay, so this is how it's going to do. The bell's going to go. This Kingfisher bell, 1 minute to go. And then once the 1 minute time's up, I will start clapping. The whole audience joins in with slow clap. And your job is to practice now. Practice. Yeah. Right, it's drowning out the speaker. Right.
Only after the bell.
Yeah.
1 minute after the bell.
minute after the bell.
You do have a warning.
All right.
Yeah.
I normally slow hand tap start.
Yeah,
Quite
yeah,
early
yeah.
on in
Sorry,
my
yeah.
speeches.
Okay, right. Are we ready?
Yeah, this one.
Are we all ready? Everyone's ready. Okay, now I have a timer. Speaker number 1. So the first speaker will be getting, the opening speaker will be getting 5 minutes. Subsequent ones between 5 and 7. Flexible diagonals. Right.
Before you start, so Sam did send the presentation, which we have to scroll through anyway to get to it. So I might as well, but I don't know what he was going to say, so I can't. I
Just
can't
excuses.
Yeah,
That's all we're
that's
doing.
right.
Excuses before they even start.
I'll just
Who
leave
is
it there.
that
I'll just
man
leave that
and
there.
why did we ever
It's-
bring him
can
in?
we'll just move on. Seriously.
Right. All right.
Um,
I think we should start this on.
There you go. All right. I think that's the last of his slides.
Are we ready? 5 minutes. Your 5 minutes starts now.
No, hang on, started before. Yeah.
No.
He's
All
already
right.
done.
We will ever strive for the ideals and sacred things of the city, both alone and with many. We will unceasingly seek to quicken the sense of public duty. We will revere and obey the city's laws. We will transmit this city, but not only not less, but greater, better, and more beautiful than it was transmitted to us. This is the 4th century BC, when a group of young men from Athens, who were known as the Urban Design Forum, got together and made this oath to their citizens, the citizens of their city, Athens, to leave their city better than they found it. In 2103, Greta will be 100 years old. Does anybody know who Greta is? You can't answer that because I haven't got time. Greta Thunberg is from Stockholm and is 15 years old. She gave a speech to the UN about her school strike and her protest about climate change and why we weren't doing anything about it. She sparked a global day of action last week where millions of school children took the day off in protest, took the day off from school in protest to protect their futures. Our young people are committed to changing the world for themselves. They have to break and then remake the rules. They recognise that our world and their future is sick and that this needs a remedy. Panacea is the goddess of giving health and remedy. So it is apt that urban design is a panacea, or can be seen, is talked about as a panacea. For a panacea is not about a utopian ideal city, but it is a way of offering help to those in need and of offering healing to the sick. To know the remedy, the panacea, you must understand the things that make you ill, analyse how they work, and then eliminate them. Good urban design does this. Urban design is both a process and an outcome. It is a way of thinking and an action. These two are writing a lot of notes because they have no idea what I'm saying. we have no practice in doing this. So urban design seeks to reconcile the different interests involved in the city: the highway engineer, the planner, the politician, the architect, the developer, and of course the public. Urban design is about leadership. It's about discourse and empowerment. It's now common for politicians to embrace the language of urban design, and it is a space that we're able to explore what it means to be a Maori city, to be a city in this part of the world, South Pacific city. Urban design allows us to have that debate and have those discussions about these big issues, which can then lead to actions. Minister Phil Twyford sees urban design as a social tool and a mechanism to bring about transformation. I shall completely misquote him by saying, he said, "Good urban design is not some nice to have. It is not some pretty veneer. Good urban design is the stuff that works. And because form follows function, stuff that works is so much more likely to please the senses." He then said, "Good urban design is always the key to doing density well." Sorry, is also the key to doing density well. Designing the spaces in between our homes will help us build desirable livable densities and is probably the only thing that will ease the fears of the NIMBYs. Streets, public realm, public placemaking, density, intensity, sprawl and form, they've all entered the common lexicon and are talked about constantly in everybody's household and at every school. It is now the language of urban design. Urban design also operates over time and a range of scales. So infrastructure may last for centuries. Objects of great beauty, such as the aqueducts, have now graced our world and were very functional before. Where are those great artifacts today? Buildings and demography may change slower and perhaps may change slowly, but may last decades. Whereas occupiers, land use, shop fronts, materials, services, they may change more frequently. And urban design operates over all of those scales. It is now operating the political, the social, the cultural, and the environmental spheres, which it never was before. It is concerned with regional strategies and creating small spaces. It's concerned with organising complexity of place, with organised complexity, of place and of order. It is about variety. These things are loved and make our cities livable. It is the absence of urban design that has poor outcomes and seen poor processes. Urban design is the state of connectedness, which isn't a word. I know that it's not a word, but you get what I mean anyway. So, a panacea is not a utopia. It is a remedy. Without the action that is demanded by a focus on urban design, we will make our environment sick. We are coming to the realization that the way we design our cities and towns can make us more or less productive. It can make us ill or contribute to our health, make us happy or depressed. These things are not an end in themselves. So I don't stop making myself happy because I am now feeling happy. I must maintain that sense. So urban design isn't finished. It's a process as well as being an outcome. The panacea of urban design is a long time in the making. If we want Greta to live to be 100 years old, we need to design our cities like we actually care. We need action, and we have the remedy. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now. The best time to design the city we want was 50 years ago. The next best time is now. I give you urban design.
It's only clapping because you got the 5
10
minutes
points for
perfectly. Yeah.
timing.
Yeah, well, I'm never going to manage that. I don't think I have that long of content, actually, because there wasn't much to talk about in a rebuttal sense, was there?
Right. So have you already started? Or shall I start?
Better start.
Okay, your time starts now.
So, well, that was all kind of serious, wasn't it? I thought we were here for a bit of fun, so sorry about that, Ben. Maybe if Sam had been here, there'd be a bit more wit and humour in the thing, but whatever. Here for a bit of a fun. And it's kind of, you know, to an extent, has the moot really been addressed? Actually, you've still got my mouse too, which is a bit of a problem, because I might need mousey. Oh, good Lord. Good Lord, how do we, yes, I'm going backwards, am I? Oh, there it is. So, yes, there is of course a moot. And this is about urban design. We know what that is, I trust. And we do, to an extent, agree on the definition of panacea, not necessarily around the Greek goddesses, but certainly in relation to the cure-all definition. The universal remedy, the wonder drug, the perfect solution, the magic formula, the silver bullet. And presumably in terms of hoping for something, we were hoping for something good. Just a supposition? Do you agree? Were we hoping for something good to come from this urban design endeavour of ours? Okay, so in the premise that we were hoping for something good to already have happened from the panacea, the cure-all of urban design, I ask you, look out the window for brightness. A car park and a leaky building. Have we got there yet? Are we there yet? So, come on. As the negative have proved decisively already, we are not there yet. We haven't got there. And it's not looking like urban design is doing anything to help us. So, if we had got there, we'd clearly be living in that utopia already, which we are not. So, almost end of point. Negative wins, we're not there, urban design hasn't helped us at all. We're not in that nirvana, that's for absolute sure. Not only has urban design not delivered on the promise of nirvana or the cure-all to all of our urban woes, we say, in the negative, that not only is it not the panacea, but it's actually urban design has become the problem.
That's
because
right.
of the way it's trivialised all the things that were important.
Yes.
And all those wonderful places that Ben held up as being delivered through urban design, this happened way before there was urban design, when there were actually people who knew what they were doing, not this urban design bunch who've made a filthy mess of it since. So, how we're going to convince you that this is the case for the negative is that our following two speakers, first of all, architect and, as we've known, urban campaigner supreme Julie Stout, is going to demonstrate to you that all of those old things that Ben talked about actually were delivered well before there was an urban designer, but also that they are the great things that should be delivered and that we should be hoping for, not courtesy of urban design. Then following Julie, we have property professional, extraordinaire, commentator, conscience and castigator, Leonie Freeman, and, you know, pre-trade me thinker. Wishes she had followed that pursuit rather than this one, but never mind. Property Council needs her, so that's good. who, aside from her cutting rebuttal and repartee, will remind us that the Camel Committee of Collaborative Urban Design has failed us all horribly. And rather than achieving a panacea, the profession has been captured by the enemy, bogged down in bureaucratic detail, and lost the plot entirely. So far from being the panacea, it is in fact now the problem. Leonie will delve the final blow of this preposterous motion of this moot and really confirm that the point is that we now have a problem. Now, quick. Of course, I was going to have a bit of go at Ben. No, not Ben. Sam. Ben is Sam's son, also, by the way, in a born sense. So, anyway, I'll carry on. I'm running out of time.
You got your
so I was going to have a bit of a go at Sam Bourne, who's Ben, and so this is the wondrous contribution of urban design courtesy of New Zealand NZTA. Now, how would you like your concrete walls delivered? Or, because the urban really has to be clustered away from our bloody great motorways that we're delivering on a regular basis through the preposterous notion of good urban design. Which way am I going? This thing doesn't seem to want to work very well for me. We can even have a cultural response as well. And then,
Well done. Right.
I thought it was a debate. Sorry.
There's more. The debate part hasn't quite started. This is the opening premise. Yeah, see, learning. Take possession of the mouse when you start. Right. Speaker number 2 for the affirmative team. You have 7 minutes, and your time starts now.
So, sorry,
we
what
were
was that?
told 555.
5 to 7.
Oh, just because she's a girl.
It's the same for everyone.
Just because she's a girl.
She's the only girl in the bureaucratic world.
Would you like me to restart the time again?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Bureaucrats changing the rules.
Wow.
So thank you very much, Rachel, for giving me such a good opening proposition. Because while I've got some points to make, but I want to start off with responding to what you've just said. And I think the overwhelming thing from your talk just now is just what dinosaurs we have on our left here. Because if I look back on my professional career and I look at where we were 15 years ago, that was exactly the response that I was getting from our engineers, from our builders. But quite unlike the team on the left, those people have actually moved on. So I thought I might just touch briefly on how the process of urban design is actually making a positive contribution and how it is very much a process and not a destination, and that we have indeed made significant progress along the journey in the last decade or so since the Urban Design Protocol. So in our case, as most of you will know, is we operate out in the suburbs. So the suburbs is not the glamorous place where urban design started out 15 years ago. It tended to be very occupied by hero projects in the city centre. However, it is, I think, in the suburbs where we can measure some of the difference most starkly that urban design is starting to make in Auckland.
Don't touch them.
Don't muck them up.
So what we have found over the years is that urban design has very much become the language that we use to discuss the functionality and the well-being of the places that most of our people live in.
Beautiful.
And that it allows us to discuss the built environment and the changes that we are making
This is the mighty Hobson Group.
and how we might make some difference to people's lives. We're seeing loads of evidence now from Hobsonville Point that there is better community cohesion, that 70% of our people, of our community feel that there is a strong sense of community compared to a much lower number in the surrounding areas. 90% of people feel that the neighbourhood is safe for their unsupervised children to roam around in. And I think especially as we're all aware of the dangers of helicopter parents, it is a huge difference that urban design has made to our future generations.
So a muck.
better than old people.
Yes, well, that's true.
So what my argument is that urban design is contributing to allowing people to live better lives, to have easier lives, lives where they are more connected to the people around them, where everyday life becomes a little bit easier because the people are independent, and that it has created a language to discuss this. My argument is also, and I think I'm particularly interested in the very interesting argument, no doubt, that Leonie will be mounting after the conversation she just had with me a few minutes ago about the about the thought leadership and contribution to a better Auckland that her members wish to make, is the discussion that we're increasingly having about the value that urban design brings to property. You know, the people that participate in property development, that it is all about creating and protecting value, that it allows individuals to work towards a joint outcome that they all understand, and that our builders now understand that operating in a whole and someone who's coordinating the context protects their investment. The banks, even the banks are understanding this now compared to the dinosaurs here on our left, that they understand that their investment is safer in places that benefit from good urban design. Our home buyers understand that, even transport engineers understand that at NZTA. Oh, yeah. I would agree that that understanding is somewhat
captured by the loonies. This urban design loonies.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to talk about is how urban design is actually contributing to allow us to build more affordable homes. So really, case in point is that it allows us to build relatively simple, relatively cheap to construct homes that work well because of their context. So while it allows...
What context?
It allows...
The emphasis on
Context, for God's sake.
It allows us to get away with simpler, cheaper building because they work in the context.
Very good ones, do they? Simple and cheap.
Because they work in the context they work in.
Don't need a good house for them.
Furthermore, urban design has become the language that allows us to talk as a city about how we might honour Manawhenua history and traditions.
I think we have 3 minutes to read this slide.
Can anybody from SMC can you identify that?
That's terrible parenting skills.
Letting them sort it out. Was it come up?
I thought this was a debate.
So just by way of evidence, this is how urban design has helped us have a conversation with our development partner, Ngāti Whātua Kaupara, over what might be appropriate in that space. Going forward and looking at the work that HLC is now embarking on in terms of regenerating communities in which Housing New Zealand owns a lot of land, it allows us to respect the unique character of these neighbourhoods and to have a conversation with various professionals, but also with those communities about what is important now and what is important going forward. It allows us to do the ordinary well and to accept simple and inexpensive buildings by being sophisticated about their context. There you go.
Oh, well done.
Dark outside.
So of course, how these debates occur, and there's this whole thing about karma. So I'm always interested to see just how far people push boundaries, sledging like the Australian cricket team over here on the...
Well, we
will see. We will see how this pans out. We'll just see how it goes from there.
So
If it starts, if
we've
it,
come in on time and budget.
yeah.
You're the wrong side.
Yeah.
So if it starts to deteriorate after this first week, we'll just have to crack the whip a little bit stronger, right? Okay.
Right.
7 minutes.
7. Thank you. Thank you. Roll it.
Ready?
Thank you.
Your time starts now.
Okay. Well, I would just like to say that Ben and Katya have really drunk the Kool-Aid, haven't you? I bet you came here hoping for a bit more than that, but... And you really need to get out into the real world and not hide away in the suburbs. What about Manukau City? Here you are fussing about the middle classes of Hobsonville. Get out of the hole where you find your builders. and really get to grips with what urban design is doing to our society. Everyone, the real problem is actually that everyone these days is saying that they can be an urban designer. Don't you feel threatened by that? I bet you do. So, as we put it to you, urban design is now the problem, not the panacea. In these beleaguered times that poor Greta is finding herself in, Ben, we need to go back and reflect on the past. Do I need to talk into this?
No.
Yeah. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you, oh my God. Reflect on that, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, I give you early civilization. And they were civilized. They knew how to define themselves in space and time. They didn't have someone saying, that desert is flat and sandy. Those pointy things are out of context. Make them horizontal to reflect the blah, blah, blah.
Where's the activation?
They didn't have an urban designer saying, where are the trees? The street lighting plan, safety from soot falling. Oh, and while you're at it, more seats, please. Ancient Athens, which Ben referred to, trying to show he does have some knowledge. The worshipping of the gods allowed a divine spirit to come over the Athenians and create the city. So splendid, so uplifting of spirit, it became the foundation place of democracy, the agora. In the marketplace, the centerpiece of everyday life, a jostling ferment of meat, people, and ideas, not tidied away behind some cute little signs and coffee tables. Eek. Rome. Woo. Now, what urban designer could even come close to creating something like that? Oops, sorry, I'm driving this.
Are those the slides I
Look
gave you?
at the... you wish, my boy, you wish. Look at
Your
the
students, I gave
intricacy.
you those for your
No,
students.
look at the intricacy, the intimacy, the innate happiness of inhabitation implied in this plan. Drink it in, because you won't see it again. And the splendor of St. Peter's. No urban designer created this. Or these spaces. Look at that. No safety rails around those ponds. And look at those lovely little streets. Washing hanging out, not tidied away. Real life. Oh, I need Istanbul. Cities change, we recognize that. Here is Istanbul in its imperial Roman phase. I put that in for your edification. Now overlaid with a blanket of its Ottoman culture. The Grand Bazaar. Can you see that up there? That great massive tiled roofs. The original shopping mall. No urban designer would go near that. Look at the richness and diversity of that. Now and then, that's the ancient thing. And now, this has continued through centuries and not an urban designer in sight. Oh. Now, where's this, I ask you? Go on, come on, someone must know. Aren't you taught anything at school? Yes, I can hear you all thinking. Urban design at last. She can't deny this. All those axes and nodes, tidying up all that messy medieval rubbish they had before. Oh. And look at all the brand new housing. No mix of roof lines or 10 different materials here. But there are some trees, I give you. Streets quickly filled up with the traffic jams of the day. But this wasn't achieved by an urban designer. No siree. This was achieved by Baron Haussmann, a lawyer a musician, and a man who knew how to get things done. He was not a man to be reduced to tears by an urban design panel or told to get the neighbours' consent before signing off. Chicago. Good places start out as the embodiment of the zeitgeist of their place and time. Chicago, the manifestation of a surveyor's map dividing up the land into rectangles of money, was hardly an auspicious start to the lovely city as it become. Latterly, urban designers may try and claim credit, but no, it was the architects of Chicago that have defined it, like Mies van der Rohe. Again, not a man to be trifled with. It was they who shaped the city and made it the powerful embodiment of urbanity it is today. No, today, urban design and urban designers are the problem. Mimicking a pastiche of tropes rather than dealing with the real big issues of our city. This, ladies and gentlemen, is our problem. Thank you. It's bloody hopeless.
Yes.
No, I don't need it.
Okay.
Leave that one up, please.
Off. I do.
Right. Third speaker, the rebuttal, not headbuttal, rebuttal. So we'll have 7 minutes in which to fill up and tear down their case.
You know, with so little to respond to, it's very difficult to
Oh, come on.
figure out how I can speak for
Civilization.
7 minutes in rebuttal. And the rules of rebuttal are I have to
Civilization, it's not a
no
big
new
deal,
arguments.
is
I just have to respond to the very very lean pickings from
You're allowed news.
dinosaurs to the left. Look, you know, listening to dinosaurs on the left, I can almost smell the smell of pre-urban design mediocrity on their breaths.
You really shouldn't try it, David. It just doesn't suit you.
Now is not the time to get faint-hearted. We've made such great grounds. Collectively, architects, urban designers, surveyors, landscape architects, planners, we've made huge inroads. Even the engineers. You've heard criticism of the traffic engineers. If Sam was here, he'd be defending those lame arguments about where NZTA, our transport agencies, used to be, was the top 15, 20 centimetres of the concrete barriers. But today, NZTA and others are far more enlightened. We're all far more enlightened. Big changes are afoot.
Yes.
And to that point, to that very point, I think there's a complete misunderstanding about what urban design seems to be, or what urban design is.
Tell us then.
Well, I will tell you.
Come on. Your time's running out. We've already got like
Yeah, and I hope
Those wonderful places that,
give us a diagram,
Julie showed us before, I think Egypt, Rome,
Istanbul,
Istanbul,
Chicago. Come on,
Chicago.
Paris.
those were urban designers. The creators of those places were urban designers. You even used the language of urban design when you described those places, and I'm sure they were all conscious of exactly the sorts of things that we all have been striving towards for many years. They, in most cases, didn't have the challenge of the automobile, the car. We've had to deal with that. Things have had to adapt. We've had a refresh. Urban design, in its new guise, is refreshed, but it builds on many of the same aspirations, goals, outcomes, and processes even that those cities were created by. So I do not accept that the proposition that urban design is not the panacea we've hoped for. And I don't believe you as an audience have really been given a fair argument.
This is what you're hoping for. You got the sickness, clearly.
Anyway, as we mentioned, urban design, a panacea is not about an end state. It's about the journey, it's about the process, and we're on that journey, and we should continue on that journey.
Silver bullet, you might need one yet.
To merely look out the window and point out a couple of examples, one that clearly predates the new wave of urban design, and one that's an improvement. You can probably see, looking at those two examples, some improvements. Yes, the building's leaking.
I suppose that's environmental. That's an environmental
But I
We
think
just thought it was social housing.
to that very point, we can all see the shift out there. So again, very flawed argument, Rachel, I'm afraid, to just point out the window and just clasping at straws. And there you have the difference there. There's a progression and there's a continuing progression.
So the car park is definitely worse
well on the
than
way.
The plastic wrap, I'll give you that. We've progressed a long way from the car park to plastic wrap.
So,
is it social housing culture? Is that actually where the low-cost social housing is going?
Yeah. No, there's too many
Not delivered at Hobsonville,
many
of
windows.
course, you know, but Central Auckland, that's okay.
Anyway.
Question time.
All right. So, not much to rebut. Not much substance there. Sorry. Not a huge amount of time left. But look, you're just really struggling, as I'm sure you are too, to really find much to respond to there. Those were examples of great urban design. We're doing some fantastic stuff, and we should continue doing it. So
I mean, we were way back when.
And we're continuing to do it. So really,
we're doing it. You're just bureaucrating it.
Oh, anyway, so I think both, and it's not just about the public sector. We are from the public sector, but the private sector, we will acknowledge, we will not take all the credit as the public sector. You in the private sector have made a difference. Perhaps you may be questioning yourselves, but I'm sure your private sector colleagues in the audience don't share those same doubts. They will agree with us. When it comes to the vote, they will agree with us.
I'm sure they will.
That urban design has been the panacea. And we look forward to your final...
and no pictures. I thought urban designers couldn't even speak without a picture.
But he's kind of a plenary...
No. We have some wonderful images. Can we
add some words?
Roll the camera, roll the movies, please. We do have a...
It's on a timer, so
what about Port of Auckland?
Oh, can we have questions now?
Questions from the floor.
Who's doing that?
Yes, they could benefit from some urban design.
Oh, you did have... Is that one place where the...
And I think a number of us are itching to give it to them. Here we go. Look at that.
You know that's my hated public art, don't you?
Oh, it's wonderful places that speak for themselves, really.
Yeah, I can take claim for that.
Not you. The sunset's really good. Oh, well, that's one of our projects. That's us. Oh, you can't do that.
Come on.
It's very limited, and there should be more budget for projects like that, I have to say.
You're often Napoleon III character, aren't you?
Yeah, I think you're really undermining your own arguments there.
No, it's also our project. Come on. It's just like, come on.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's somebody else.
That's Warren Amani. Architects.
Yeah, no, that's it. It's a bit of an underside of a ship, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that
Hobsonville.
design? There's lots of people.
Yes.
No, it's a load of tents.
I would have thought that was the shopkeepers.
Thank you.
This is actually kind of a health hazard because the children in there with their nappies on are kind of...
Somebody might drown.
I'm quite sure about that.
Yeah, that's not urban design.
That's definitely art. That's right.
Oh, a bit fuzzy.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, and so it goes on.
So it goes on. Yes. Well, you can pick a few good bits, I must admit. There are a few good bits. We've done a few good bits for the city. You know, we've tried to do our bit.
One would hope so after all this time.
Yeah.
These wonderful places. Baron Houseman would be very proud.
That's right.
No,
Lots of rubbish
boxes. I think it's a mess. Don't you agree? Houseman would be furious to have his name put to that.
That's right. The good bits don't outweigh the bad. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You know, if it was all...
Yeah, look at that messy roof line.
Yeah, another one of our projects. Good Lord. Really get it. We do our best.
All right.
It's really
We got the mouse sorted.
But it's not.
Not yours? Not your presentation?
Just goes on and on and on.
Oh, words.
Yeah.
Clever way of buying a bit more time. Right. Speaker number 3 of the negative team. Your time, 7 minutes, starts now.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, it's very clear that the opposing team has not debated the moot well. It's obvious that our side has been very clear that urban design is the problem and not the panacea. If we start with speaker number 1, Where did he come from? To me, he was just confused. He talked
He's a
about
recent immigrant.
he talked about breaking and remaking the rules. He talked about with urban design you could be happy or you could be unhappy. He talked about you could build something good or you could build something bad. Now all that says to me is not urban design, it just says to me a bureaucrat. And the one thing I've learned about bureaucrats is that they relitigate everything, every time you want to do anything. So that was our speaker number one. The speaker number two, Katja, talked about urban design making a contribution. And she shared the example of Hobsonville, but forgot to tell you it's only taken, or will take by the time it's finished, over 25 years, so it's not exactly particularly quick. And if you look at the house prices, the average price at Hobsonville is over $1 million per house. So how is that solving some of the big issues in our city around affordable housing? And it's not. So, whilst 70% of the people in the community, she says, are happy living at Hobsonville, it only caters for a very small part of our community. So urban design, to me, if it's working, should cover everybody and create vibrant communities, not communities for the elite and the wealthy.
Yeah, yeah.
And is that what we should be focusing on when we've got a shortfall of over 50,000 houses in Auckland as at today, and we're not even building yet the target of 14,000 houses that we need to build every single year just to meet the target. So we're only up to about 10,000. So that's not working, I clearly say. And then the final speaker went back to all those examples that we had quoted of great cities like Egypt and said that was an urban designer. But here's the thing, the Urban Design Institute was only started in the late 1990s. So it's only been, you guys have only been around 20 years. So I don't think you can take credit for Egypt and Paris and all those sort of things. That just is not right. And then obviously he just ran out of words because all he showed you was pictures.
Good work, I have to say.
So I asked you,
Well chosen.
I asked you, where are the big issues? And they clearly did not show the big issues. So let's talk about urban design. And what do we have? A rules-driven, bureaucratic, formulaic approach. Dr. Google, very important source, quoted, "A decision by a committee is the unwilling appoint the unfit to do the unnecessary." Further Dr. Google definition is a committee is a group that keeps minutes and loses hours. And that is how we're designing things at the moment, by committee. And then what happens when you go to a committee is you're sitting there one person against a cast of thousands and every single meeting's costing $5,000 an hour. So how does that help build our affordable housing in the cities that we need? So we need to get away from this bureaucratic, formulaic, rules-driven committee approach to planning and developing our city. Because we've lost those visionaries of the past, those visionaries that have built the cities of Cairo or Paris, or many of the examples my colleagues here have shown you. Let's think about visionaries. Now, this isn't urban design, but it potentially could have been, because his vision was to say at the beginning of the 1960s that we're going to put a man on the moon by the end of that decade. Now, he had no idea about what materials would be used, about what technology would be used. He just created this vision. And then a country pulled around and behind that absolute vision and created the concept and the ability to get a man on the moon by the end of the decade. So where are those visionaries when it comes to our cities? Where are those visionaries when it comes to developing our vibrant, inclusive, innovative, and future-proofing cities? Because we've lost them, because what happens? We make our decisions by committee.
Yeah.
Driven by public sector bureaucrats.
Yeah, here. Urban design. Yeah.
So let's look at a Kiwi visionary. If you ask Sir Peter Blake, and I had the real pleasure of being able to hear him speak after New Zealand won the America's Cup back in the 90s. Now, did he say that he won the America's Cup because he created a committee of people? Did he? Not at all. He created the unifying question that he's become famous for. So whether you were a boat designer, that nerdy computer person figuring out how to make things go faster, or whether you were a hands-on sailor on the boat, it didn't matter. When they wanted to figure out how to do it better and how they were going to win, they had one unifying question, which was, will it make the boat go faster? So I ask you all today, what's our equivalent unifying theme for creating amazing cities in our country? And it is not formulaic, rules-driven, bureaucratic urban design systems. So I think we've clearly said urban design is the problem, not the panacea.
Thank you. Right. We're now getting into the domain that's normally held by lawyers, which is doing the summing up and reply without introducing any new evidence. And we're reversed. So Rachel will be going first, and John, counsel, always gets the last say. So this is how we're going to run the rules here as well. So we will have 2 to 3 minutes. You need 2 or 3, Rachel?
Yeah, no, I reckon 2's enough.
2's enough. Right, there we go.
Not much to debate.
Short and punchy. Right, your time.
That's right. Sorry. Yes, well, I always kind of mixed that around and thought I was going to get the last word, because everybody in our office knows that I always get the last word. So how did this happen? Okay, so poor Greta, Ben, you know, why does she have to rise up in arms and bring everybody with her to protest against the world that she's in today? It's because the crappy situation that we've landed ourselves in, courtesy of all this urban design mess that's going on. So clearly, there is no panacea in urban design creating the utopian world that we were all hoping for. No, our poor children have to get out there and try and make it better for themselves because the urban designers are doing such a terrible job. So that's Ben. Katja, well, yeah, as has been said, she really lives in a little rarefied world of her own, doesn't she? In that, little bubble. It would be good to sort of get out there and sort of see how bad it is for the rest of us, you know, when we don't get to live in that world. And maybe I want 3 minutes after all. And then John, well, that's kind of really unfair, isn't it? Because, you know, we at Boffa Miskell, we do try and do a good job in the city. And most of us aren't urban designers, actually. We're landscape architects and, you know, good people endeavouring as planners. And, you know, there's the 1 or 2 urban designers amongst us. But, yeah, using our own good work to really kind of counter against our negative argument is just plainly unfair. And I'm going to have to just say that that's just not good enough. So, that aside, I think it's quite clear that urban design has become the problem. We're not getting the city that we hope for at all, the city, the country, the nation, the world. The whole thing's going to hell in a handcart. Urban designers aren't doing anything to help. There's no cure-all on urban design. It is, in fact, the problem this world faces. Thank you very much. Great job, team.
The clapper meter is going to come later.
Are we allowed to clap?
Right.
Yes.
Final words. I think John was going to have
so
2 or 3 minutes. Or?
Well, absolutely. So in the absence of Sam, I'm now concluding, because our first speaker is meant to conclude, but very unfair on Ben. But Ben did a fantastic job, as I'm sure you'll all agree, setting the scene for our argument. Some great quotes there. His story about Greta, I mean, very compelling, and just setting that platform for our argument, which is very compelling. Katja, you know, had all the evidence there. She had, you know, wealth of evidence. I think if you had more time to speak with our second speaker, you'd find out all those health benefits, those community benefits. That statistic around 70%, you said, of the residents in Hobsonville find the place has strong social cohesion. What a massive difference urban designers have made to Hobsonville and many, many, many other places. It's not just the rarefied suburbs of places like Hobsonville. It's everywhere from downtown, outside this building here, right out, you know. And Julie, I must have a crack at you. In doing a bit of research for this, I discovered that Julie had some involvement in the Albany Centre way, way back. It's not that surprising that she's on this side of the debate. Still doesn't seem to have learned a quarter of a century on about the benefits of urban design.
Really,
yeah, shocking. You know, many of us have tried to fix that place over the years after that ill-conceived ring road with the big roundabouts, and that's exactly the sort of thing that urban design has changed and will continue to change, provided we all continue to drink from the Kool-Aid and believe in the value that urban design adds. So thank you, audience. You've been a wonderful group. We really appreciate your ongoing efforts. And don't believe these naysayers here. They really are just dinosaurs. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Right, so what we're going to be doing is you, the audience, are going to be judging which had the strongest case, the most compelling. You're going to be walking away saying, I'm with those people. That's exactly how I feel. Right? So we're going to be doing that just one moment. But just for those that are sitting on a fence still and haven't quite swayed one way or the other, we're going to open to some questions. We can have some really nitty-gritty questions for people that may have. And I'll just wait for the roving mic to arrive to you. You can ask, and you can direct it at any team member. And we'll get you to ask the question into the microphone so our audience around the country can hear it as well.
Kia ora koutou. I am Boopsie. I have a little group called Places for Good, and I'm neither public nor private. I'm just a mother of 2 kids who walks the streets of Auckland and takes the bus. And my question is, for instance, I wanted to start a walking school bus, and I literally have to fill out a hazard form of all the hazards on my walk from my home to school to council before it gets enrolled as a walking school bus. But my question is, while you're working so hard to go out and up, what are you doing in the public sector for the existing suburbs, for the suburbs that have always been there? Because I find a lot of my rate-paying money goes to Hobsonville Point, who are 72% happy, and traveling on Richmond Road, 100% people are unhappy right now, today, and every day of the last month. So I worry about the existing suburbs that are dinosaurs in this city and what Auckland does for them. That's my question.
Good question.
How do you reply?
It's starting to get quite serious now, isn't it?
We all thought
and I noticed that we do have one of my local board members in the audience who might actually want to add something to this. But I live in the inner west, and I live in Mount Albert, and recently Mount Albert has had a bit of TLC. It has had a bit of attention to try and make, you know, it more people-friendly place to create a great place on the Mount Albert main street. So there's been a lot of work done there. I'd encourage you to go and look at it if you get a chance. I think over time we'll see the benefits of that.
You're bloody well doing it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is investment, but I agree. We do need to invest more in our suburbs, in our town centres, and I think through the amalgamation, the creation of Auckland Council, it's just one of those things that
we've got more bureaucratic committees.
You know,
helping this walking bus.
Exactly.
It's a walking bus, but you know, we've lost a little bit of the local, but our local boards and local communities are rising up again, working with the urban design fraternity, many of you in the room, to try and address those sorts of situations. But I acknowledge it does need a bit of attention.
Thanks, I'm actually interested in what the private sector are doing to solve this problem.
Well, That's the point. Urban design is doing nothing to solve the problems because it's not creating the cure-all panacea at all. Moot. Decided. Done.
Yeah.
Walk out of the room.
Yeah.
We've proved the point.
Yeah.
Beyond all doubt. So we'll have another question.
We had another question.
Over here.
There was one floating around. Over here.
A float? Oh, that wasn't floating. There's nothing floating
There's one
around
coming.
over there, is there?
I don't need the mic, I'm loud enough.
No, but you won't be heard in Christchurch, for goodness sake. They can't hear you in Christchurch.
My question is for the private dinosaurs.
Yes. We're going back
And-
to our day jobs tomorrow, you'll be pleased. Where we're doing good things in the city.
Better protect my interests. My question to any member of your team is actually understanding what your interpretation of urban design is, because a lot of your arguments seem to be about the problem of bureaucracy.
Urban design bureaucracy.
Yes.
The one that
No,
we all
but
get
my-
caught up in
my
on a
question
daily basis is good
to your
private
group
sector
is,
workers trying to get our good
what do you
projects
do?
through.
What do you do?
He's a bureaucrat, clearly.
Yeah, obviously.
Exactly.
I've actually been a bureaucrat for far too long,
Yes,
and I
we can tell.
totally
We can
agree.
tell by
Come
the
on,
nature
come
of
out
your
to the real
question.
world and
Bureaucracy
find out what
is-
it's like
the
the rest of us
Is a
that
pain and a
work in
problem.
this city.
But I'd be really interested
Become a doer.
to know
Yes, get on.
what you think urban design is.
Well, as Leonie reminded us, officially urban design is a 1990s concept. You know, that's right. Yeah, come on. That's right. It certainly
Is that
doesn't go back
BC?
to time.
BC.
That's right. And so, in our definition, the professional body of urban design is a recent formulation of a bureaucratic world, a design by committee outcome which has not delivered any form of panacea or silver bullet cure-all to our urban problems. Witness the muck we're in out there.
Yeah. Again, point proven.
Yes, good answer.
How long does a girl have to wait for a drink run?
7:01. The event goes for another half an hour. Let me tell you.
Have some beers.
Yeah, but the end bit said mingling and
Okay,
drinks.
well, no, one more question. One more question.
Ah,
The most exciting one.
relatively sane person, so yeah.
Last one.
let's have
Then we'll get that. Who has got the clever meter, by the way?
and somebody from the private sector.
Yes.
I have a question for the bureaucrats.
Yay.
If urban design is all important, why does our city have such a low percentage on evaluating design in RFPs?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can
Good
you repeat
question.
that again?
Why is
Repeat
price
it
so
and say it really
important?
loud.
Why is design not prioritised? Is it for the capacity of teams who want to contribute to good urban design in the city?
Yes.
Yes.
Good question.
Good question, because it's
As we
all
say,
about
Why is
price.
price so important? Surely you want to pay for a good
Methodology.
101.
On to the last one.
Previous experience of the last 5 types of the project.
There
Answer.
is no value on urban design. Doesn't contribute a thing.
The answer is that there's not enough of it.
No.
There's
No,
not
it's
enough.
because your procurement
It
department's
is not
got
enough.
too much power.
It is not valued enough. But we're not saying that it shouldn't be. It is. It should be valued enough.
But again, there's all the bureaucrats
what
and
I
the
think
procurement people
Well,
driving
on
the
some
planning of our
examples-
city.
The examples that were shown, you know, that Julie and Rachel, what they're
We
really
all lost
saying
lots of money on
is
trying
what they
to
would
do
like
for
is a
our good
pharaoh,
city.
a pope, Napoleon III, or
we're just
or the
saying a
commissioners at
visionary.
Chicago, who've all got all the money, who
A
can
visionary.
ride roughshod over everybody else,
No,
including
no.
the public, including property owners.
A bit like
Houseman
Hobson
didn't
Wood,
do a
really.
consultation
Look,
event.
it's a legacy. legacy.
He didn't try and engage any
the
form
process.
of Manifesto.
Yes, but
The visionary.
He was given.
Your
was
children
given-
are fighting.
He was given billions and billions in
The
order just to
visionary.
build a vision that he
Yeah,
had.
and
Had he been
didn't
an
do
urban
it.
designer, we
No,
might not have
nothing
got
would
the
have happened.
Paris
No.
we have today.
We could
but
be
we
smarter.
might.
No.
We can do it
On that
smarter.
note, wow, thank you very much. Can everybody give the participants a round of applause? Let's practice again. You're clapping your hands right now. We have we have a clapometer. We need to know who won. Who won? Who's interested? Where's the thing?
Oh.
Oh, okay, so you can measure it from there? Right, okay, so sound goes backwards. All right, people. Right, okay, so you have to clap for both of these answers. Clap the loudest for the one that you believe in. Right, so has urban design been the panacea we'd hoped for? We say yes. Right. Okay. Has urban design been the panacea we'd hoped for?
He's having to change.
Oh no.
Yeah!
Right.
I'm not an app, but I think the nays may have taken that one out.
Do we get a drink now?
We can have a drink now, but first of all, thank you very much to our sponsors, everybody. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a little gift from Urban Design Forum as a thank you.
Yeah.
Huge thank you to Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
To get 2 boxes of chocolates.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.
All right.
Oh, that was fun.
So that's it. Say hello to everybody in Wellington, Christchurch, Queensland, and Tauranga. Go forward. Here's the drinks.
Okay.
Yes.
Well done, Lou.
Well done. That was great.
Sorry. I was just going to say.